This is Gemara Bava Kama Daf Tes Vav, and we pick it up on the bottom of Yud Dalid Amid Beis, approximately 8 lines from the bottom, as we continue to quote the Mishnah, and we're up to the part of the Mishnah that said Bifnei Bezdin. And of course, the Mishnah, just to scroll up for a moment, was discussing all different forms of damage, Shum Kesef, Shava Kesef. We learned that yesterday that Shum Kesef is that you have to pay actual money for damages. Shava Kesef is that you pay from Karka, unless the person is Taifes, as he goes on his own and grabs. And now we learn Bifnei Bezdin. Says the Gemara Prat, what does a Bifnei Bezdin come to exclude? If someone sold his properties, and then what happens? Then he goes to the Bezdin. In such a scenario, the Nizik will not be able to collect from those karka, from those pieces of land. Why? Because they were sold, it's no longer in the Mazik's possession. Says the Gemara, you see from over here, Shema Mina, what do we see? Says the Gemara, Shema Mina, Mocher nechaz v'chabala Bezdin, ein Bezdin gavin lamehen. Says the Gemara, Shema Mina, loive u'mocher nechasaf. From here we see, incorrect, one more time. This is a kasha. Shema Mina, should we learn from here? Mehen, sounds like a good scam. You borrow money and you own real estate, but you do? You go after you borrow the money, you sell the real estate, and the Bezdin is not going to be able to go and collect from those properties. Is that true? It can't be, says the Gemara. So therefore, says the Gemara, and why can't it be? So Rashi says, because we just happen to know that the din is that, of course, Bezdin is going to be able to collect the Kaimalan, that what? Asi Malva Vitarif, he can collect from the purchaser. Ella, says the Gemara, Ella Prat, LeBezdin Hed Yoitais, that the Mishnah is going to teach us that you need Bezdin Mumchin to dan up Dine Kanasais, and a regular lower level court would not suffice for such a case. And continues the Gemara al Piedim, that the damages that we're discussing have to be obligated via Edim. What does that mean? Says the Gemara, Prat, this excludes a Maideh B'Kenas. Someone admits in a case that he has to pay a Kenas, and then what happens? V'achach bo Edim, then Edim come, Shupater. In such a scenario, you are potter. Just like we know, Maideh B'Kenas is potter. So even if after the Haidah, after the admittance of the owner, Bo Edim come and testify that it's indeed that he is obligated, meaning that which he admitted to is true, still he is potter. Says the Gemara, one second. This is an old machlekes. What are you going to say? What is the chiddush of the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, what the chiddush of the Mishnah is? Seifa tzrichalei. It's talking of the Seifa is that which teaches the chiddush with regard to Eidim. And the unique part of here is that we're going to be reading the Mishnah as one continuous case. As you'll see in a moment, it's not just Seifa, it's the Seifa. It's Bo Eidim in conjunction with the din of the next line in the Mishnah. What is the next line of the Mishnah? Next line of the Mishnah is B'nei Chayrin u'b'nei Bris. As the Tab Rashi points out, like we just said, that the Eidin are B'nei Chayrin u'b'nei Bris. When we read the Mishnah, we said it's a little bit cryptic. So that's exactly what Rashi here is pointing out. That the Eidim themselves have to be B'nei Chayrin or B'nei Bris. B'nei Chayrin, what does that come to exclude? Lemute Avodim. That an Eved, a slave, can't be testifying on such a scenario. And B'nei Bris is coming to exclude Akum. Says the Gemara in classical form. Why do we need both of them excluded? Just say one and we'll learn the other one from it. Says the Gemara, Sricha. No, the Mishnah had to exclude both. Why? An Eved, I would have thought Mishandein lo yachis. An Eved has no yichus. An Eved has no as the Rashi in the last wide line says, Hadrimon ben Tavrimon ben Mazael, as we've learned that there's no yichos, there's no lineage to an Eved. Avol Nachri, but when it comes to a guy that what yesh lo yaches, it's true that the guy is not a yid, obviously, but he has a yichos, and therefore maybe what imaloi, maybe the guy could indeed serve as an aid in such a scenario. Says the Gemara. Emalai, v'yashmina nachi. I would have thought we should lo sheich mitzvahs. Aval have the sheich mitzvahs emalai. Sricha. Therefore, we have to list both cases. So just look at Rashi for one more moment. Rashi says Evi Kanani sheich mitzvahs. Talking about an Evi Kanani, which is sheich mitzvahs. Sha'nashu chayavis be'emdi gamar lo la miisha. As we've seen many times, an Eved has an obligation to do the mitzvahs whilst he is an Eved in the possession of the Jewish owner. And at what level does he have to do the mitzvahs? Like an Isha. So you would have thought only a guy which is lo shayach mitzvahs. That's why the halacha would be that such a person cannot be an aid to testify about damages. But maybe an eved, yes. Therefore, sricha, the Mishnah had a list of both cases. We continue 6 lines down to Zvav and Aleph, quoting the Mishnah, V'hanoshim bechlal nezik. Women are included in damages, meaning, as we'll see, both ways. If one damages a woman, if a woman owns property that damages, in both cases is going to be an obligation. Says the Gemara, where do we know this from? And we're going to have multiple sources. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Rav Chaitan Rabbi Yishmael Amar Kram. Ish, says the pasuk, Oy Isha, ki yasim mikol chatois. A man or a woman that does any of these aveira, he says the Gemara Hishva Kosov. Isha leish chol einshim shebatayra. Man and woman are equated for all einshim. This is an einish, and therefore, if her animal damages, she's going to be obligated. Source number 1. Source number 2, Dveir Eliezer, Dveir Elazar, Tana V'Ilam Mishpatim, and these are the laws that Shetazim Levneihem. Hishva Kosov Isha leish l'chol dinim shebatayra. For all monetary matters, for all mishpatim. And pasuk number 3, Dvechizki v'Yosek Lili Tana Amar Kra, says the Torah, v'hemis isha isha, and if the ox killed a man or a woman, hishva kasav isha leish l'chol misais sheba Torah. So 3 psukim coming along and teaching us that a nashim, the halacha, that nashim are bechlal nezik. Says the Gemara, of course, usricha. Why do we need all 3 psukim? Explains the Gemara, di ashmina, and we're about 10 lines down, 12 lines down. First one line is sricha. Di ashmina gama'isa. If you only said the first halacha, I would have thought what? The first, I would have thought that the Torah was having rachmanas on her. Why? That she should get a kapara. So I'm not bringing a carbon. So we were thinking that Hashem is allowing her to get a kapara, and that's the reason why a woman is included in the kinasim, and she has to bring a carbon aval dinim. But when it comes to monetary halachas, ish tvar masu matan ish ishaloi. Maybe I'll tell you it's the derech of the man to be involved in business. So only he is involved in the mishpatim, in the monetary laws, whereas in ishaloi, dinim, if only would have said the second halacha, I would have thought the reason is so she can have a livelihood. She wants to go into business. If she wants to do some sort of business dealing, she'll be able to, because she'll be bound by the same halachas. And Rashi over here spells out, where's Rashi? 1 second. Rashi spells out, Diloi, Havya Bechlal Dinim. What would happen? Havya Pershi Tagramina. No one would want to do business with her. No one would sell her anything, because everyone would know that she's above the law. So no one would want to get involved with her. So Keichet Havya Lo Chayusa. Aval Kapara, Ish Tavar Mitzvah in Isha, Talav Abbas Mitzvah Loi. But maybe only a man, which is a Tavar Mitzvah, meaning a man has more mitzvahs, basically, as Rashi points out. Whereas an isha to lav bar mitzvah, she's not obligated in all the mitzvahs. I would say loy. V'yash minani tarti would have said these two. I would have thought avol misha hacham misham kapara v'acham misham chiyusa. Avol le'inyin katala. But with regard to death, now what if a shark killed an ish or an isha? So what if a shark killed a woman? I would have thought ish devar mitzvah l'shalim kaifer. Isha loy. I would have thought only a man who has all the chiyuvim of the mitzvahs, then if he is killed, then you have to pay kaifer. Kaifer being the payment made to the yarshim of he who got killed. So maybe if a man got killed, that there's a lack of the lost all these mitzvahs, maybe that's when you pay kaifer. But isha loy, the yashmin and kaifer would have just said kaifer iban nishama. Maybe because kaifer is very high in the totem pole. Why? Because his life was lost. Avalani tarti like an iban nishama. Emalai. Says the Gemara, Sricha, that's the reason why we need all three sources, Kapara, Dinim, and Misa, teaching that a woman is Bechlal Nezik. And we continue, we're about 14 lines of the wide lines, the two das, Hanizik, Bahamazik, Bitash, Lumim. Says the Gemara, a very famous and a very relevant Gemara for much of Baba Kama. Says the Gemara, what is going on with the halacha of Palga Nizaka? Itmar palgi nizka, Rav Papa Amar Memaina, Rav Yehuna Breid Yeshua Amar Kinasa. What is the payment that one has to pay for Karen when one has to pay Chatzi Nezek? What is the payment of Chatzi Nezek? Is the payment of Chatzi Nezek a kinas, a fine of the Torah? Or is the payment of Chatzi Nezek Memaina, compensation? Well, look at Rashi for a moment. Rashi's a little bit higher up in the page. Rashi says, Memainahu. That what? Dinu. Sheishalmenu ve'inoi kinas. But nafkamina is what? The nafkamina is that if something is merely a kinas, a fine imposed on the person, the halacha is moide bekinas potter. But if it's memaina, if it's compensation, we don't care if you are moide. So explains the Gemara, where does this machlekes Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breid Yeshua come from? It comes from the fundamental understanding of a shar and its damage. Explains the Gemara. Rav Papa Amar Memaina, why? Because Savar Stam Shvarim La V'Cheska Shimer Kaimi. An ordinary ox is not considered guarded. Is not considered that it won't do damage. It's true this animal is a tam that it never damaged yet. And it's true it only pays Chatzi Nezek. But it's a lava cheskeshimer to make ox. You got to be very careful. And therefore, bedinu. And in reality, really, you should have to pay full damages. So why do you only have to pay half damages for the first 3 times? Rachmano de chasale. The Torah has mercy. Why? The Torah has mercy because the ox did not become yayeh, the ox did not yet become a muad, and therefore you have to pay chatzi nezek. But the payment is a mimoina. It's compensation. It's something that's a magia law. It's something that you're obligated in because animals are general dangerous creatures, and you should have watched it. You didn't. Therefore, really, you should pay the whole thing. But the Torah has Rachmanas and allows you to only pay half. Continues the Gemara of Hunabred Yeshua Amar Kidalsa, and you can anticipate this the flip side. Why? Because Savar Stam Shvar Mecheska Shimer Kaimi, an ox, before it does any damages, you can assume it's Mecheska Shimer. You have no reason to assume anything else, and therefore, bedinu in reality, delay l'shalim klal, shouldn't have to pay anything. For Rachmano, they can't say in the Torah is levying a fine. Why? Keheche delanatre leture, so that you watch your ox. So famous machlekes Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breid Yeshua. What is the status of an ox the first 3 times that it gores? Was it to be expected? And therefore, the Torah is just being merciful by allowing you to pay half damages, but it's still payments of mimayna, of compensation, says Rav Papa. Or no, was it odd? Was it strange? And therefore, really, you should be pater, but the Torah is levying you a kanas so that you go out and you have extra care in guarding your ox. Continues the Gemara. Tinan, we learned in a Mishnah 7 lines from the wide lines. First word on the line is Heichi. Asks the Gemara on the Manda Amar that says it's a kanas on Ravun Bred Yeshua. Our Mishnah said Anizik v'amazik b'tashlumim b'shalom the Manda Republican is coming moina. Hainu d'sheich nezik b'tashlumim. Then it makes sense that we say that it's considered nizik b'tashlumim, that you're collecting payment. Elamandamar palgan is kakinasa hashta delav didei shakel b'tashlumim. He says the Gemara. What do you mean nizik mazik b'tashlumim? That there's payments. If in reality you're not supposed to get anything, it's a special kanas that they levied. What's the reason? B'tashlumim Isa. You can tell me that he's involved in tashlum, and Rashi over here speaks out to explain the kasha a little bit deeper. Look at Rashi, b'tashlum misa. Rashi says, bitmiya, the mashma, the mashmoyis of the words are shemavsin midinoi, that it's makiyaloi, that it's coming to him. That doesn't fit with Mandamar that says, Baal Genitzka Kanasa. Explains the Gemara, Lo Nitzcha, you're right, Ella. The Mishnah is only referring to, according to this Mandamar, the depreciation of the nevela. That's the part that's considered tashlumim. Says the Gemara, B'chas nevela. We just finished doing this a few days ago. The previous Mishnah taught tashlumi nezik, and from there we learned out. So why we have to say the same thing over here? Says the Gemara in the first white line. Chada b'tam v'chada b'muad. One is talking about a tam, one is talking about muad. Sricha, we need to say it twice. Diash minan tam. I thought mishum dekati loy. It is not a muad yet. Have a muad emaloi. Maybe once the animal becomes a muad, then there's no din of the bailam metablim ben avela, and maybe the mazik has to be the one to be bothered to be metabel tevela because his animal is a muad and prone to damage. V'yash minan muad. Then what? Mishum dekameshalim kula. You're paying the whole thing. Aval tam emaloi. Sricha, so defends the Gemara on the Manda Amar, Pal Genizka Kinasa. Continues the Gemara, Tashima. Says the Gemara, another Kasha Manda Amar that says Kinas. Ma bein tam de muad. What's the difference between tam and a muad? 4 lines to the bottom, Sham. Shatam mishalim chazin nezek migufa yumoy mishalim nezek shalim in aliyah. The tam only pays from the value of the animal's body, and the muad has to pay even from the aliyah, even from the other areas. Ask the Gemara v'yim Isa, and if you hold pal ganizka kanas, that's a special din by chayav damages. Listing nami ha tam ina misham al piatzmoi and muad mishalim al piatzmoi. Because when it comes to kanas, moida b'kanas is Potter. So why don't you say, according to the Mandamar, that Palgan is Kanasa, that Tam Ina Mishal Al Biatzmai, because it's a Kanas. And a Muad does pay Al Biatzmai. Why would we live that out? Says the Gemara, the classical answer, Tana V'Shayir. The Tana left things out. Asked the Gemara, really? My Shayir, Dai Shayir. What else is left out? Explains the Gemara, Shayir Chatzi Koifer. The Tana left out paying half of Koifer. If the animal gores and kills a person when it's a tam, you pay chatzi koifer. Imshav chatzi koifer, says Gemara lav shiuru on the last line. Why? Because hamani, because who could we be going like Rabbi Yisrael Glili? Then we're talking about chatzi koifer. We're going within the opinion of Rabbi Yisrael. The tam pays chatzi koifer. So Gemara tried to prove it. Ask Kasha on Kenas from the fact that it was not listed, and the Gemara defends. Continues the Gemara Tashima on the last line of Tetzvav Amar Aleph, moving over Tetzvav Amar Beis. Ask the Gemara from a Mishnah, a Mishnah in Ksubis that we learned. Hey, Mishairi has Pliny, Oishairi shall Pliny. If someone says, my ox killed a certain person, or my ox killed a certain shor, what's the halacha? The halacha is, Arim Zem Shalim Al Piatzmoi. Even though he was Moida, still the halacha is there is a din that he has to pay. My love, says the Gemara Bitam. We're talking about a tam, and yet we see you pay al biatzmai. Seemingly, the payment for a tam, the chatzi nezik, is not a kenas. Says the Gemara Loi b'muad. Avol tam, my woe that didn't be. Is that really the case? If that were to be the case, as Gemara Yachad the Tani say for the end of that Mishnah said, "Hey, Mishari Yisavdi Shal Blaini, Ein Mishal Malch Biatzma." It said a case where if one admits that his shark killed an Eved that he does not pay, asks our Gemara if the whole payment of Tam of Chatzi Nezik is a Kenas, Lifnik V'Lisnik B'di Day. The Mishnah should have explained and differentiated within that last case that B'Medevarim Amurim. Says the Gemara, no kasha. Why? Kula b'muad kamairi. The whole Mishnah over there is discussing a muad, and therefore the only way that it was able to find that it would not pay al bi'atzma is in the case of the person admits that his animal gored an ox. Tashimam continues the Gemara. Proving Palginiska Mimaina Zaklal. Call Amishalim Yoiser Amash Hezek Ena Mishalim Al Piatzma. Anytime you pay more than a damage, you do not pay Al Piatzma, you do not pay if you admit. My love. Can't we say, oh, Pacha is being Hezek? That's only if you're paying more than you damage. What if you're paying less than you damage, like the case of Chatzi Nezik, like the case of Tam? Can't we say, Mishalim, that you would, yes, pay Al Piatzmai? Again, clearly, Palgan is Mimaina. It's compensation, it's payments, because if it was Kinasa, if it was a fine, you would not pay Al Piatzmai. He says, Merloi, no Raya. The way to medayik that brisa, the Mishnah, is not if you damage less, but if it's equal. Avol pacha is mai, but let's say there was less damages, what would it din be? Hachanami, tolei mishalim. Says Gemara, no, you're right. Then if it was less, if it was chatzi nezek, then it's kenas, and then you don't pay al biatzmai. Ask the Gemara, Yachi Adatani Zakal Kol Mishalim Yoiser Al Mashezik in Mishalim Al Biatzmei. What should have said? List these Zakal Kol Sheina Mishalim Kimoshezik. Should have said anyone that doesn't pay equal to the damage, and that would have been perfect to being medayik. Both more and less would be different. Demashba Pachaisu Mashma Yoiser. Tiyofta says the Gemara, you are correct. This is a good kasha on the Mand Amar that holds Palga Nizka Kanasa, because if it was a Kanas, the wording in the Mishnah should have been different. The wording in the Mishnah should have been Zaklal Kimoshe Hizik, thereby excluding whether it's more or less. But continues the Gemara, fascinatingly enough, you know what the halacha is? Palga Nizka Kinasa. What? Ask the Gemara the obvious kasha. Tiyofta ve'elchasa. First, you slug it up. First, you tell me there's a kasha. Then you tell me you actually pass that way. Answers the Gemara in yes. Time am I having tiyofta? Why is it a kasha? Why? Because the Mishnah didn't say Kim Moshe Hizik. But that's not such a good kasha. Why? The reason is because it's not absolute. Why is it not absolute? Because there are scenarios, cases that we're going to learn. Chatzi nezik, of case of rocks that are shot out by the animal's foot. That's like a mirila. That's a special that such a scenario has a din of money. Therefore, we couldn't write an absolute rule. Says the Gemara. So now that we know, now that you know that half damages is a kanas, we have interesting cases. We have a kelev that's eating a sheep, and we have a sheep, yes, v'shunra, a cat that eats a chicken, mishuna, which is odd, loy magbina mi bavel, and they wouldn't collect such damages in Bavel. Says the Gemara of Hanimili Biravia, it's only a large chicken or a large sheep that's not normal to be consumed. Aval bezutri or chehu, but if it's zutri, then it's going to be normal. So says the Gemara, this is only a kinas, is only going to be in the normal case. But vitafes loy mafkinamine, but if the person grabs his payment, we're not going to take away from him. The Amar, and if the one that was damaged says Kavali Zimane Da'azli La'ar Israel. Here in Bavel, you don't collect such damages. Why? Because they don't collect Kanasim in Bavel. Only the Bati Tinim in Eretz Yisrael collected Kanasim. So if he says, write me a Shar Shamta and let me go to Eretz Yisrael and I'll bring the court case there, Kavinale, we do that for him. We make a date for him to go bring up the court case to Eretz Yisrael. V'iloi. Azel, and if the mazik doesn't go, Mishamtinale, we put him into Chayrim. Ubenkach says Gemara Mishamtinale, either way, what? We're going to put this person that had this dog, this person that had the cat that damaged into Chayrim. Why? Adam Zeka. Because you have a damager in your property, you're not allowed to have a damager in your property. Midrab Nasan, Titania, Rabbi Nasan, Minayin Shlo Yigdal Adam Kelev Rabitech Beisai. It's halacha. You're not allowed to have a wild dog in your house. You can't have a rickety ladder in your house. Why? Because it's going to damage. You're not allowed to keep something that can cause damage in your house. You should not place blood in your house, which teaches us you have to be careful about even the property in your house. And says the Gemara, therefore, either way, we're going to put this guy in chayrim for the fact that he's not taking care of that which is damaging in his house. And we're going to conclude today's share by beginning the next Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Chamisha Tamim, Chamisha Muadim. There are 5 that are a Tamim and 5 that are a Muad. A behema, which is a domestic animal. Eina me'ades. It's not a muad lo ligach, not to gore, lo ligof, not to push, lo zashach, not to bite, lo lirvas, not to squat, lo livo, not to kick. Hashem, coming to animal eating with its tooth. Muadis la'achol es harayula. It's a muad, it's common to eat that which is fitting for it. Haregal, to damage the foot. Muadis lishbar, b'derech hilucha, to break as it walks. V'shar amuad, v'shar amazik, v'shar hanizik, v'ha adam, and the adam. Hazeiv continues the Mishnah. Hazeiv v'ariv v'adayv v'nemra bardalis v'hanachash. These 5 wild animals, wolf, lion, bear, leopard, and bardalis, snake. Says the Mishnah, Arelu mu'adin. Rav Lezer, Rav Zanchahin b'nei tarabus. While they are domesticated, Rav Lezer realized you can even domesticate these wild wolves and lions and snakes and whatnot. Eina mu'adin. But hanachash is mu'ad la'ilam. Hanachash is considered always to be a muad. I will pick it up from the Gemara in the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.